Hello, how are you? Did you have a good weekend? Everything all right? Well, whatever is happening, this is your 10-15 minutes of peace and a story read to you by me. And this week's story is called The Postcard. And it's actually the backstory of Penny Leighton. You know, Penny has married Simon, the vicar, and she married very late. She's very glamorous. She'd had lots of boyfriends, but she never committed to anybody. But Simon was the one. And now she's arrived in motherhood, I should say. Motherhood very late as well. And so this is her story. She hasn't had an easy life, which explains perhaps why she's so independent. This is her prologue when she was a child, okay? The baby was crying. Penny listened. Would her mother hear? She opened her eyes wide but could see nothing in the deep blackness of her small bedroom. She rolled over to face the closed door. The perfect line of light from the landing barely illuminated the carpet. She heard the door of the drawing room open downstairs and the soft tread of her mother ascending. There was the comforting shoo, shoo of her mother's stockinged legs as they brushed together, approaching Penny's door, walking past, and then headed into her baby sister's room. "Have you had a bad dream, darling?" her mother murmured. Penny listened and caught the rustle of baby Susie being gathered from her cot and into her mother's arms. Susie had stopped crying and was snuffling. Penny heard the kisses and imagined them being dropped onto Susie's soft scalp and downy hair. "Mummy's here, darling. It was just a naughty old dream. Now, where's Bunny?" Penny, 5 years old, tightened her hold on her own teddy, Sniffy. She pulled him into her arms and sniffed his flattened, furry ear. She whispered to him, "Susie's had a bad dream. She's only got Bunny, but I've got you." Eventually, Susie was soothed back to sleep, and her mother walked back and past Penny's room. Penny called, "Night-night, Mummy." She got no reply. Now here we are in winter in the present day. Penny Leighton didn't feel right. She hadn't been feeling right for a long time now. She couldn't remember how long it had been since she had felt right. She was lying in her big marital bed. The Cornish winter sun had not yet risen, and she could see the dark sky through a crack in her exuberant poppy curtains. She thought them so cheerful when she bought them. She looked at them now and closed her eyes. She had to get up. She had an important call to take at 11 o'clock. She opened her eyes and squinted at her phone. 10 to 7. "Morning, my love." Simon stirred and reached under the duvet to put his hand around her waist. "How did you sleep?" She closed her eyes. Oh, is that a of yes or a of no? Did Jenna wake up? Her look said it all. "Oh dear," he said, "why won't you wake me? I'm more than happy to see to her." "Then why don't you?" "Well, I don't hear her." "Well, there doesn't seem any point in us both being awake then." Simon thought better than to reply. Penny had not been herself recently, quick to criticise, withdrawn and moody. He'd felt the sharp side of her tongue too often of late. He decided to make some coffee and bring it up to her, but the act of shifting the duvet even slightly caused her grievance. "Why do you always pull the bedding off me?" She pulled the duvet tight around her chin. "It is winter, you know." "I didn't mean to. Coffee?" Penny knew she'd been unkind and rolled over to face him as he sat on the edge of the bed, back towards her, slipping on his T-shirt of the day before. She reached out and stroked the side of his hip. "I'm sorry, just a bit tired. I'd love some coffee, thank you." He stood up and she let her arm fall back onto the sheets. She said, "I do love you, you know." He ran his hands over his bald head and picked his glasses up from the bedside table. "I know. I love you too." He smiled at her and, putting a knee onto the mattress, leant over to kiss her. She put her hands on either side of his face and returned the gentle kiss. "Coffee, tea, or me?" she laughed. From across the landing came the grisly morning cry of their daughter. "Mum, Mama, Dada. Oh, shit, groaned Penny. Simon eased himself back off the bed. I'll get her. Stay there and I'll bring you your coffee. Penny had her coffee in the luxurious silence of her peaceful bed. Winter in Cornwall held a quiet all of its own. No tractors would be out until the sun came up, no bird would be stirring in its nest, and no parishioners would be beating their way up the vicarage path to give Simon another burden of responsibility. Finishing her coffee, she stretched and wriggled back down into the warmth of her covers. She'd wait 5 minutes, just 300 tiny seconds, she said to herself, and then she would feel strong enough to get up and face the day. Unable to put off the inevitable any longer, Penny tore herself out of bed and stared into the bathroom mirror. First, she examined the 2 spots on her chin and then the circles under her eyes. She stood sideways and lifted her nightie to see her pale and wobbly tummy. She'd seen fewer pleats in the curtains of the local cinema. Whose stomach was this? She wanted her own returned, the firm and rounded one that she'd taken for granted for all those pre-baby years. Dropping her nightie and shrugging on her dressing gown, which still smelt of Marmite even after a wash and half a day hanging on the line in the sun, she slopped down to the kitchen. Jenna was in her high chair and Simon was attempting to spoon porridge into her. "That's good, isn't it?" he said encouragingly. Jenna opened her mouth and grinned. Pushing her tongue out, she allowed the cereal to ooze down her chin. Simon spooned it back in. It came out again, and before Simon could catch it, Jenna had her hands in it and rubbed it into her face and hair. "Would you like a banana then?" he asked, reaching for a baby wipe. Jenna shook her head. She had just turned one. "Mama!" "Mummy's a bit tired," said Simon. Penny sat at the table. "Too right, Mama's tired." "Get this down, you." Simon passed her a fresh cup of coffee. Fresh cup of coffee. "A caffeine hit should make everything look better. By the way, I've emptied the dishwasher for you." Penny gave him a cold stare, suddenly irritated again. "You've emptied the dishwasher? For me? Why for me? Because it's my job, is it? The woman's job is to empty the dishwasher, is that it? Oh, Penny, you know what I meant. It's a figure of speech, like when you tell me you've done my ironing for me. Well, that is for you. It's yours. Do you ever do the ironing for me?" Simon took his glasses off and began polishing them. You know what I mean." Penny picked up Jenna's breakfast bowl. "Come on then, monster, have your porridge." Jenna obligingly opened her mouth and tucked in. Simon, returning his glasses to his face, tried a cheerful smile. "Good girl, Jenna. You wouldn't do that for Daddy, would you?" "Why do you refer to yourself in the third person?" asked Penny. "Don't say Daddy, say me." "It's just a figure of speech." Penny popped the last spoonful into Jenna's mouth. "Everything is a figure of speech to you, isn't it? Pass me the wet wipes." She expertly mopped Jenna's face and hands, hoping that Simon felt inadequate watching just how deftly she did it, then lifted her from the high chair and handed her to her father. "I'm just going for a shower," she said. He looked anxious. How long will you be?" "As long as it takes." He looked at the kitchen clock. "Well, I can give you 10 minutes, then I have to go." "You can give me 10 minutes? How very generous." Penny went to leave the kitchen. "Sarcasm does not become you," Simon blurted. "That wasn't sarcasm," she threw over her shoulder. "Sarcasm takes energy and wit, and I am too tired for either." Let me have a look. Ooh, there we go. I think that's it for today, Monday. I'll have a longer one for you tomorrow, okay? But this is how Penny's life is evolving at the moment. She's exhausted. She's got a small baby. Everything irritates her. I wonder if any of you who've experienced this sort of thing realise what's happened to her. Anyway, I will speak to you tomorrow, all right? And thank you for today. Have a good night. Hello again. Happy Tuesday. How are you? Okay. I hope so. I hope so. I've been out in the garden mostly watching the jackdaws. We got this new box put up about a month ago, and my friend's husband made it, and it's just lovely. Anyway, the jackdaws have always lived there, but the old box came down a long, long time ago, so they've always been looking at the chimney pots. But we've been discouraging that. So now the new house is up, I thought, will they remember that they used to like this bit? And anyway, they're moving in, Mr. and Mrs. Jackdaw. The wife is called Jackie, obviously, and she's getting a bit furious because he keeps flying in and out with twigs that are too big to fit the hole. And he does manage to get it in, and then he comes out again with it. And she's on the doorstep going, I told you, measure it, measure it. So, yeah, that's what they're doing. And they're lovely. I might even, apparently you can train jackdaws, because like all in the crow family, they're very intelligent, aren't they? So if I have them trained up to, I don't know, make the tea and toast in the morning or mow the lawn, I will let you know. You see, I live in a world of whimsy. It's the only way to get through these times, isn't it? It is. Right, I've talked enough. Let's keep going. This is the second day of the postcard. And yesterday we met Penny, not in her usual self. She's a new mum. She's worn out. Her little daughter Jenna is a year old. Penny's missing work. She's being, because she's used to being a career woman. She wants to be at work, but she's in the vicarage with her daughter, with her lovely husband, Simon, the vicar. And yet she just isn't herself. She's not feeling great. So in this reading, this excerpt, if that's how you say it, she has decided, as all people know, when you're in the house with a child, sometimes you just need to go anywhere. So she's decided to go around the corner to the village shop to meet Queenie. So here we go. Hello, me duck. The indomitable Queenie was sitting behind her ancient counter, opening a box of springy, multicoloured tinsel. Here, have you heard the latest? Because, Queenie's a gossip, she's great. Nope, said Penny. It had better be good, because I'm starved of news. Jenna's not too good a raconteur yet. Oh, she's beautiful. Wait till she starts talking, then you'll want her to shut up. Give her ear and pull up a chair. You look wiped out. Penny sank gratefully into one of the 3 tatty armchairs that had appeared recently in the shop. Queenie liked to chat, and most of her customers enjoyed a sit-down. Oh, this chair's very comfortable, sighed Penny, sinking into the feather seat. Ain't it? Simple Tony got them for me over St. Evil. Someone was chucking them out. Queenie sat down with Jenna on her lap, and Jenna reached up to pull at the rope of pink tinsel Queenie had thrown around her shoulders. Really pretty that is, darling, isn't it? When you're a big girl, you can come in here and help me get all this stuff out. Jenna crammed a thumb in her mouth and sucked it ruminatively. Penny shut her eyes and enjoyed the peace. Oh, tell me the gossip then, Queenie. Well, you know Marguerite Cottage. What's that behind the vicarage? Oh, God, yes, the builders have been making a racket for months. Yeah, well, I had the estate agent in here the other day, come in for her fags, silk cut. Not proper fags at all, but that's what she wanted. Anyway, I asks her, oh, who's buying Marguerite then? And she says it's been let for a year by 2 fellas from up country. I says, well, good luck to them if they're happy together. And she says, one of them's a doctor and the other's an artist. So I says, stands to reason, these gay boys are very arty and nice-natured. And she says, they've got dogs too. And I turn round and I say, well, they'll always have dogs. And she turns round and says... Queenie stopped mid-flow and looked at Penny. Oi, Penny, have you fallen asleep? The following morning, Simon crept out of bed and left Penny snoring quietly. She hadn't been sleeping well at all since Jenna had arrived, but he always refused his offer to share the nighttime feeds. She always refused his offer. He knew how tired he was with a baby in the house, so goodness knows how tired she was. Simon stood on the landing and looked through its curtainless window. From here, in the winter, before the trees were in leaf, you could just see the sea at Shellsand Bay. The waning moon was low in the sky and spilling its silver stream onto the dark waves. It was so peaceful. He sent a prayer of gratitude for his wife, his daughter, and his life. Downstairs, he put the kettle on, and while he waited for it to boil, he tidied up the previous day's newspapers. Tomorrow was recycling day. He enjoyed the order of recycling and was fastidious about doing it correctly. He opened the paper box. Someone, presumably Penny, had put a wine bottle in it. Swallowing his annoyance, he picked it out, replacing it with the newspapers, then opened the box for glass. It was almost full. He counted 8 wine bottles, not including the one in his hand. All were Penny's favourite. He put the lid back on and stood up. So this was why Penny had been so moody. She was drinking. Too much. She'd always liked to drink. When they first met, she'd never been without a vodka in her hand, but she'd settled, and although enjoying the odd glass of wine, he had not seen her the worse for wear since she'd been pregnant with Jenna. Upstairs, he woke her gently. "Coffee's here, darling." Penny opened one eye. Her wavy hair was over her face, and she pushed it out of the way as she sat up. "Thank you." "How are you feeling?" he asked. She looked at him with suspicion. "Fine. How are you feeling?" "Good, yes, very good." How was he going to broach this new and tricky subject? Shall I buy some more wine today? I think we're low on our favourite." "Are we? We polished off a bottle with a steak last night, I suppose." Simon thought back to last night. She'd been halfway down a bottle of red wine by the time he got home. "Yes," he said carefully. "Well, if you're passing the off-licence, get some." She took the coffee cup he was proffering. He took a mouthful of his own coffee. "We seem to have got through the last lot of wine quite quickly, and you are still breastfeeding." She gave a heavy sigh. "Oh, I see. You're lecturing me." "Heavens, no." "Well, it sounds like it." She put her cup down and got out of bed. "I need a pee and, as it happens, an aspirin. I have a headache." He pushed his glasses a little further up his nose and looked at the carpet. "And don't give me that attitude," she glared at him. "I have a headache, not a hangover." The morning followed its usual routine. Penny treated Simon with the cool indifference that had recently become second nature to her. When had that habit started, she wondered? And he trod round her as if on eggshells. Eventually, he left the house to do God knew what, and Penny saw to Jenna. Jenna was washed and dressed, breakfasted, entertained, and put down for her nap. She was overtired, and it was making her silly and difficult. Penny checked her forehead. "Is it those naughty teeth?" she asked Jenna, and Jenna nodded her pink-cheeked face, and a string of drool dribbled from her mouth. "Poor old Jen." Penny kissed her daughter's damp head. "I'll get the Calpol." Cuddled on Penny's lap, Jenna suckled at Penny's breast while keeping a sleepy eye on the picture book being read to her. She fell asleep before the end, giving her mother a chance to drink in the sight, sound, and smell of her. The overwhelming love Penny had for Jenna hurt. It also filled her with a kind of panic. She'd never been the maternal type and had honestly thought that she would never marry. She had had endless unsuitable affairs with glamorous and handsome men, not all of whom were single, but she hadn't ever imagined falling in love with someone, or someone falling in love with her. But both things had happened when she'd found Pendruggan, the ideal location for her Mr. Tibbs television series. She had been cruel to Simon when she'd first arrived, had thought him a parochial innocent, a drippy village vicar, wearing his vocation on his sleeve. He had originally been keen on her best friend, Helen, who'd just moved into the village. Penny had teased him, but Cupid had shot his arrows capriciously. The oddest of odd couples fell in love and were married. That was a miracle in itself. But Simon's God had one more surprise for them. Jenna. Penny leant her head back on the Edwardian nursing chair and looked around the nursery. Soft colours, peaceful, the Noah's Ark nightlight that the parishioners had presented to them on Jenna's birth, the cot given to her by her godparents, Helen and Mirren, the photograph of Penny's father. How he would love his granddaughter. And next to his picture, legs dangling over the shelf, was her love-worn Sniffy, the bear her father had given her when she was a baby. Penny shut her eyes for a moment and felt the familiar stab of grief. She missed her father every day. In her unsettled childhood, he had meant everything to her until he died. She often spoke to him, and she did now. Daddy, look how lucky I am. Jenna, Simon, success. She felt her throat tighten. Why aren't I happy, Daddy? Can you help me to feel happy? Help me to be nicer to Simon. A good wife. Once Jenna was tucked into her cot, Penny felt drained. If the pile of laundry on the landing hadn't been winking, she'd have gone back to bed. The aspirin was working on her hangover, but not her spirits. She heard the sound of raking from the garden and closed Jenna's door. Looking out of the landing window, she saw Simon, returned from wherever he'd been, raking leaves on the back lawn. His breath was steaming in the chill air. He looked happy, creating neat piles. He stopped for a moment, aware of her gaze. He waved up at her. She waved back, and debated whether to take him out a cup of tea as a peace offering. She took the tea out to him and gave him a kiss. Well, what have I done to deserve this? He asked, pulling off his warm gloves. It's a thank you, she said, and an apology. I'm so sorry I'm being a cow to live with. I don't know what's wrong with me. He put an arm around her waist and hugged her. You're just a bit tired. We both are. Babies do that, apparently. We'll be fine. Will I? Absolutely. By Christmas you'll be as right as rain. Penny nuzzled into the comfort of Simon's old gardening jumper. I don't want to hear the C word. Simon kissed the top of her head. Well, there's a few weeks to go yet, and Jenna is old enough now to sit up and enjoy it this year. You'll bring her to the nativity service, won't you? Only if I can put her in the manger and leave her there. She looked at Simon to check his reaction. Only joking, of course, but I'll bring her, yes. She'll enjoy seeing her daddy at work. Right, that's Tuesday done. Now, look, you all have a safe Tuesday evening. Keep the strength, keep the belief, and I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 3. Lots of love. Bye. Hello, how are you doing today? Wednesday, middle of the week. We can do this. I put some earrings on yesterday and I kept them on and thought, oh, I don't know why I found them. I put them in. I don't know why. I swallowed a fly. Perhaps I'll die. No, I won't. No. All of us are going to get through this in one piece. Excuse me. And also excuse the fact that I seem to have thrown the iron away during these difficult times. Anyway, that's beside the point. Here we are. So, yes, Penny's actually getting quite worried about her unhappiness. And she's got Jenna and she's got Simon and all is well. And yet something big is going to happen in this chapter. In the previous chapter, because I've skipped a bit to keep you going, but in the end of the last chapter, she runs out to find Simon. He's across the road meeting the new neighbours who are moving into Marguerite Cottage. And she shouts at him, Simon, please come, quickly. Something terrible has happened. She was pale with shock. Simon picked up Jenna and ran to his wife. Now, this is the beginning of chapter 3. What on earth is it? Simon steered Penny with one hand, all the while gripping Jenna, who was wriggling under his opposite arm, into the drawing room. Now sit down and tell me. Penny sat shakily, her hands in her lap, her fingers weaving restlessly. She stared unfocused at their wedding picture on the wall. Simon waited. Mama? Jenna put her arms out and whined for reassurance. Mama? Penny spoke. It's my mother. An old friend just rang. Thought I should know. She's dead. Simon frowned and put her hand on Penny's. Your mother is dead? Penny nodded, her face almost grey with shock. Is she sure, your friend? How does she know? It was announced in the local paper. When? Last week, but she's only just seen it. But why didn't Susie tell you? Penny shrugged helplessly. Well, we haven't spoken since that terrible lunch, and maybe she thought I didn't want to know. Maybe she thought I wouldn't speak to her if she had called, or maybe... She brushed a tear from her eye. Maybe she's punishing me just a little bit more. But darling, Simon stood before her, his hands in the corduroy trousers. Simon stood before her, his hands in his corduroy trousers, out of his depth. Penny had never told him what had happened over that lunch. He hadn't known her then, and she had steadfastly refused to discuss either her mother or her sister since, other than that they were cut from her life. He said, "Well, maybe she just doesn't know how to approach you. Could you ring her?" Penny shook her head. No. No, you're my family now, Simon, and I'm so grateful to you for loving me. Oh, that's the easy bit. You're very lovable. He put Jenna down. You're in shock. Your mother has died and you need time to process it all. There's plenty of time to think about the future, so how about a drink? Tea? Coffee? Or would you prefer something stronger? Penny gave him a wry smile. This morning I was drinking too much, wasn't I? Yes, well, I think this calls for a drink. Instead of the kitchen, he walked towards the drinks cupboard. Brandy? I've some Lovage cordial too. Shall I put some in? Penny said nothing. Jenna climbed onto her lap and, putting her thumb in her mouth, stroked Penny's hair. Get this down you. Simon placed the glass in front of her. Penny was just 7 when her father had his first heart attack. That day she'd woken early, about 6 a.m, she supposed. The sun was already up because it was summer, and she'd heard the back door open and click shut. Her father must be checking on his greenhouse. She crept out of bed and just missed the creaking floorboard outside her mother's bedroom. She stopped and listened for anyone stirring. All quiet. In the garden, the birds were busy chatting to each other and a fat thrush was pulling at an early worm. She threaded her way across the dew-soaked lawn, past the scented orange blossom bush and under the golden hop archway into the vegetable garden. There was her father, a cigarette in the corner of his mouth, his eyes screwed up against the smoke as he tied up a stray branch of cucumber. He jumped when he saw her and closed his eyes, holding his chest. "Oh, my goodness, Penny, you gave me a fright." And then he laughed and she giggled as he held his arms out to wedge her on his hip, the cigarette still dangling from his lips. "Naughty, naughty," Penny admonished him. "Don't tell Mum," he said conspiratorially, stubbing it out in a flower pot. She smiled. She liked sharing his secrets. "I won't," she said. "Good girl." He looked up towards the house. "All quiet on the Western Front?" She nodded. "Want a cup of coffee?" "With sugar?" she asked hopefully. "Of course." In the far corner of his greenhouse was hidden a little camping stove, a bottle of water, jars of coffee and sugar, and a tin of carnation milk. There was also, hidden in a large cardboard box, a bottle of Gordon's gin, another delicious secret that no one else shared. The smell of the methylated spirits and the match as it caught the flame for the camping stove was intoxicating. "Do take a seat, madam." Her father snapped open a rickety folding chair and placed an ancient chintz cushion on the seat. She sat, her bare feet with sodden grass stalks sticking to them, barely touching the gravel floor. "Are you warm enough?" he asked. "You must be cold in your nightie. Here, would you like my cardigan?" She nodded and enjoyed the warmth of his body heat stored in the wool as he draped it over her shoulders. The kettle was boiling and he made them drinks. He had 2 spoons of coffee, no sugar, and black. She had 1 teaspoon of coffee, 2 of sugar, and a large dollop of the condensed milk. She didn't really like coffee, but she didn't want to hurt him by saying so. He sat on an old wooden crate and pulled a serious face. "So, young lady, what have you got on at school today? Latin, quantum physics, or a little light dissection?" She giggled. "Daddy, I'm only 7. I've got reading, sums, I think, music, and playing." "Oh, a full and busy day then." "Yep, what about you?" He lit another cigarette. Rothmans. Penny thought them terribly glamorous. "Well, I've got to show a lady and a man around a very nice house that I think they should buy." "Why do you think they should buy it?" "Because it is pretty, has a sunny garden, and their little boy will be able to play cricket on the lawn." Penny drank her coffee. The sugar and the carnation milk made it just about bearable. "Can I come and see it?" "No, sorry, madam." Is it as nice as our house? Gosh, no, ours is much nicer. And do you know why it's nicer? Penny shook her head. Because you live in it. And Susie and Mummy, she said loyally. Her father stubbed out his cigarette. Of course, them too. Now, are you going to help me open these roof lights? Because it's going to be very hot today. For 20 minutes or so, she helped him with the windows and fed the little goldfish in the pond and put out some birdseed while he pottered in the veg patch, checking on the peas and lettuces. They heard the back door open. Her mother stood on the step. Mike, are you out there with Penny? Yes, my love. He smiled and waved to his wife. We've just been doing the early jobs. Well, come in or she'll be late for school. Penny couldn't recall the next hour or so, although over the years she'd tried. There must have been breakfast, getting ready for school, kissing her mother goodbye, hugging her baby sister. But try as she might, there was a blank. Her memory jumped straight from her father holding her hand as they walked back across the lawn to the interior of her father's car. It was big and dark green, and the leather seats were warm under her bare legs. When it was just the two of them, her father let her sit in the front next to him. Sometimes he let her change gear, instructing her when and how to do it. This morning was one of those days. And into third. Good girl. And up into fourth. It was a happy morning. Even the man on the radio reading the news sounded happy. When the news ended and some music came on, her father lit another cigarette and opened his window, leaning his right elbow out into the warm air and tapping the steering wheel with his fingers. She was looking out of her window at a little dog walking smartly on a lead with a pretty lady in a pink coat when they stopped at the traffic lights. The noise and impact of the car running into the back of them was like an earthquake. There was silence, and then she started to cry. Her father asked in a rasping voice, "Are you okay?" "Yes," she said through shocked tears. "Thank God." Her father, ashen and with a sheen of sweat on his forehead, was finding it hard to speak, gasping for every word. Penny was scared. "Daddy, what's the matter?" Her father's lips were going blue and his eyes were staring. A man watching from the pavement ran towards them and spoke through the open window. "You okay, sir? I saw it happen. Wasn't your fault. It was the bloke behind." Her father didn't answer him. He was still struggling for breath, but was now clutching at his left arm. "Daddy?" Penny was frightened. "Daddy, what's the matter?" The man called the gathering crowd for help. "Quick, someone call an ambulance. The bloke's having a heart attack." And that is 10 minutes. So that's Penny's childhood. You can see that it was pretty dangerous. And I will just read this last bit. Her father did survive that heart attack, but she, in the garden, she goes down to the greenhouse to have a look at it, and her mum says, I told him off, Margot, hang on, yes, because her mum's called Margot. Margot unwrapped herself from Penny, she's been comforting. He's been very silly. He's been smoking too many cigarettes and drinking too much gin. I'm very cross with him, and so are the doctors. I told him off this morning, Penny said without thinking. Told him off? Why? Penny was afraid she'd got her father into trouble. Because... Was he smoking in the garden? Penny said nothing. Her mother strode into the kitchen and wrenched the back door open. Penny ran after her but couldn't stop her finding the 2 cigarette butts from the morning. Was he smoking these? Margot held them up. Penny nodded and moved instinctively to protect the large cardboard box containing the contraband gin. Margot reached past her and opened the box. She pulled out the bottle. Did you know this was here? Penny remained mute. Margot shouted, Did you know this was here? Yes, Penny said, feeling like a traitor. Her mother looked at Penny with poison. So you are responsible. It's your fault he's in hospital. If you had stopped him, we wouldn't be in this mess. But if he dies now, we won't have anything. No, Daddy, no money. If we are thrown out of this house, it will be your fault. I hope you remember that. Penny lived in fear for several days, expecting to hear that her father had died and that it was all her fault. But he came back to her. That time. Poor Penny. Yeah. Penny. There are very difficult things with parents, aren't there? We've all seen and heard things and had things that have hurt ourselves. And then as adults, you have to understand and accept, forgive, and move on, I think. Anyway, I'm sorry to be depressing. I'm not meant to be. But I'll have some more for you tomorrow night. So tomorrow night's Thursday. So happy Wednesday night and sleep tight. See you tomorrow. Oi, oi. Now then, is it working? Yes, it is. Amazing. So we're coming to part 4 now of the postcard that I've been reading this week. And you know that Penny's had some bad news. The mother that she didn't like very much, or has been estranged from, has died. But her sister Susie hasn't bothered to tell her. It was there was something in a newspaper cutting, a local paper, that a friend sent to Penny to say, "Oh look, I'm so sorry your mother's died," and she had no idea. And this morning, in the book this morning, she has an email come through from an old friend, a woman called Marion Watson. But the subject is only her sister's name, Susie. So here we go. To Penny Leighton from Marion Watson, subject Susie. Darling Pen, long time no see and all that. I have received an email from Susie, which she has asked me to forward to you. She contacted me at my House of Commons address, very easy to find, wondering if I had your contact details. Apparently she's mislaid them. I sent them to her, but she wants me to be an intermediary. God knows why, given that she and I only ever met at sports day and the like, hence my involvement. Being a nosy old cow, I did read it, and may I say how very sorry I am to hear of your ma's death. She was always the most glam of all the mothers at speech day. Anyway, next time you're in London, drop in. I'd love to show you off in the strangers' dining room. Regards, Marion. Penny scrolled down. Dear Penny, since you lost contact with Mummy and me, I have had to resort to going through Marion, as she is a trusted friend of ours. I'm sorry to break the news in this impersonal way. I would have rather phoned you or come to your home, but since I have no idea where you are, this is the best I can do. Mummy died. She was very, very brave and was terribly ill at the end. I nursed her myself, and friends and neighbours were very kind, bringing in meals. They have all said how marvellous Mummy was, and how she wouldn't have lasted as long as she did if it weren't for me. I was with her till her last breath. It was so peaceful and such a privilege for me. She died listening to that lovely Schubert that she and Daddy adored. I made sure we played it at her funeral as she left the church for the crematorium. I thought long and hard whether to contact you before the funeral, but honestly, after we last spoke, I think Mummy wouldn't have wanted you there. As you can imagine, I'm exhausted with it all, and even after all that happened, feel the need to make contact with you again. We are sisters and have been through so much together. Your life has been a lot luckier than mine. You have forged a career and now have a family of your own. I couldn't have selfishly left Mummy to do what you have done. I forgive you for all the upset of the past and would like to come and visit you, perhaps in the new year. I'm taking a little sunshine break over Christmas, doctor's orders. Too many memories of Mummy. You are my only family, and my dearest wish is for us to reach the hands of goodwill towards each other in my bereavement. Yours truly, Susie. Penny's breathing became ragged again. She clutched at her bedsheets as if the bed was tossing on an open sea and she was to be cast into its chilled depths. Her eyes scanned the horrible words again. Lost contact. Mummy died. Last breath. Schubert. Funeral. Wouldn't have wanted you there. I forgive you. Penny had never felt so alone, not since she'd walked away from their last meeting. How could they have held such secrets from her? And Susie, her sister, always on target when inflicting emotional pain. Susie, the sister who'd kept the secret that Margot, their mother, had shared with her, but not with Penny. But the secret had popped out over that terrible lunch a few years ago. No apology. No comfort, a secret that had blindsided Penny, a secret she still hadn't processed, a secret she'd swept under the carpet where it could stay. Would her father have told her the truth? The memories that Penny had kept so tightly locked inside her were flashing back, thick and fast. So real, it was as if she'd stepped back into the shoes of her younger self. Little Penny, standing in the kitchen, holding her hands over her ears as her mother scolded, "You are responsible. If he dies now, it will be your fault." Penny still felt the pain of her mother's words after almost 40 years. She hadn't been allowed to visit her father in hospital. "He's very ill. He certainly doesn't want the stress and noise of a silly little girl like you," her mother had said. Penny had watched as her mother had put Susie's little coat on and carried her out to the car. "Is Susie allowed to see Daddy?" she'd asked. "Of course, Daddy wants to see Susie. She's a good girl." Penny would sit on the monk's seat of the small hallway, watching out of the window and waiting until they returned. "Is Daddy coming home soon?" she'd ask. Her mother would look at her with impatience. "Absolutely not. He's much too ill." Then one day the answer was different. "The doctors say he can come home tomorrow." Penny was filled with happiness. "I shall make a coming home picture for him." She ran up to her room and found her crayons and drawing book. She drew a picture of her father wearing his old jumper. He was in the garden and a big smiley sun with curly rays was over his head. Behind him was the greenhouse with red blobs of ripe tomatoes and long green cucumbers. She wrote, "Welcome home, Daddy. Kiss, 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 kiss," across the fluffy clouds, and along the bottom, "By Penny Leighton, age 7. She kept it under her bed as a surprise for the next day. Penny had been waiting impatiently for her mother's car to pull into the drive, and when it did, she opened the front door and rushed to meet her father. She stopped a few feet away as she saw him climb out. His perpetual suntan had faded, and his clothes were loose on him. But as soon as he saw her, he beamed and spread his arms out wide. "Penny," he said lovingly, "I've missed you." She ran to him and hugged him close, his stomach soft on her face. "Have you missed your old dad?" he asked, ruffling the top of her hair. "I have. I wanted to see you, but Mummy said you were too ill and that I'd get you overexcited." Her words were muffled by his jacket and her tears. "Did she? Well, I think you'd have been the best medicine. I feel better already just seeing you." He took her hand and together they walked to the front door. The Daily, Linda, came out onto the step. "Welcome home, Mr. Leighton. I've got the kettle on." Margot had caught up now, carrying a small suitcase and Susie. She thrust both at Linda. "I'll do the tea if you could just put Mr. Leighton's case upstairs in the spare room and see to Susie, please." Linda did as she was asked. "Come and sit in your chair, Daddy." Penny led her father to the sunny drawing room that ran the length of the house. At one end you could see the front garden and the road, and the other end the back garden. His chair was facing the back garden. Mike sat and patted the arm for Penny to sit on. "So, Pen, have you been looking after my greenhouse? Mummy said I wasn't to touch it." "Well, we'll go and have a look later, shall we?" He held her hand and squeezed it. "Oh, that reminds me." Penny jumped down. "I won't be a minute." When she came back, Margot was fussing with tea cakes, teacups and plates of bread and butter. "Here you are, Daddy." Penny handed him her drawing. "I did it for you last night." He took it out and admired it carefully. "You've got it all just right. My old jumper, the greenhouse, and I love the sun shining down." Penny glowed with praise. Margot admonished her. "Penny, don't just sit there. Help with the tea." She helped to pass round the little plates and gave Susie her beaker of milk. "Mummy, Daddy says we can go and look at the greenhouse together later." Margot looked incredulous. "Look at the greenhouse? Oh, no, you won't, either of you. The doctor has told Daddy to take things easy, which means no more digging and lugging heavy watering cans around." "But I can do that for him," smiled Penny, thrilled with the idea of helping her father. "Can't I, Daddy?" Mike smiled at his wife. "Seeing to the greenhouse isn't hard work, and anyway, the doctor said I need to take exercise to keep me fitter." "No," said Margot flatly. "The greenhouse is too much, and I'd never be able to trust you again. As soon as my back is turned, you'll be smoking again. And worse." Mike chuckled and gave Margot one of his most handsome glances. "Come on, old thing. A man is allowed the odd bit of fun." She remained impervious. "In case you have forgotten, you nearly died because of your secret smoking and drinking." 2 bright spots of colour formed on his cheeks. "Oh, for God's sake," he said angrily. "Now, don't lose your temper. I'm trying to help you," said Margot. "Help me? Castrate me, you mean? Drink your tea and calm down. You know you're not to get agitated." Penny watched this exchange with mounting anxiety. "Mummy, Daddy, stop!" Margot sniffed and sat on an upright chair, balancing her teacup on her lap. Mike looked out of the window at his greenhouse and drained his cup. "Penny, put this on the table, would you, darling?" He handed her the empty cup and stood up. "I'm going to have a look at my greenhouse," he said. "Care to come with me, Pen?" She glanced quickly at her mother, who was finding the toe of her shoe fascinating. Penny took her father's hand. As they got to the kitchen and unlocked the back door, they heard her mother shout bitterly, "Take a good look. I've got a man coming to take it down tomorrow." Penny leant back against her pillows, feeling the familiar tears pricking her eyes. Why were these memories flooding back now, drowning her? The death of a parent, the fact that she hadn't shared the truth with a soul, the opening of old wounds, the fear of what would happen next, or just a deep, dark sorrow. I'm going to find a bit that's a bit more cheery for tomorrow, because interspersed there are other characters who, as a young couple who've moved into Marguerite Cottage, and so they might be interesting. I'll see what I can find for tomorrow. Anyway, there you go. Take care. Tomorrow is Friday. Get in, and see you then. God bless. Bye-bye. It's Friday. The weekend starts here, I hope. Although days run into each other, but that's no problem because we make our own fun. I've actually had to light the fire tonight. I haven't had it lit all week, but it's jolly chilly. So it should start roaring up in a minute. So here we are. This is the last day of reading the postcard. We've heard an awful lot about Penny, and I'm sorry, it's all been rather depressing this week with her. As everything, I do always try to make my books work out nicely in the end. But the other 2 characters are new. They're coming down to Cornwall. There's a girl called a girl called Ella and her brother Henry, and their grandmother has left them some money. So I think they're moving down to Cornwall. What do I say? I think, I know they are. But the people staying in Marguerite Cottage are Adam and Kit, who are cousins. Adam is... he's a doctor, and he's also very good at acupuncture and reflexology and all those things. He's one of those doctors. And his cousin Kit is a very good artist. But of course, you know, it's hard to make a living as an artist. But he's coming down to Cornwall, where I think he probably could make some money, because there's a lot of art down here and people like it. I do. Lots of visitors like it. So here we go. This is Ella's story, the first time we meet her. It was a Sunday, and it was raining in Clapham. The branches of the cherry trees in Mandalay Road were bare, their leaves long ago dropped damply onto the windscreens of the cars parked on either side of the street. Rain bounced off the slate roofs like heavy artillery fire and swilled down drainpipes, startling flat-eared cats who skittered off to their cat flaps. Or scat flaps. At intervals, passing cars swooshed through the deep puddles, ploughing up sheets of water to drench already bedraggled pedestrians. It was a road of good neighbours and occasional street parties. The Queen's Jubilee and the royal wedding were still fresh in the residents' memories, but now Christmas trees were already appearing in bay windows, their lights flashing and twinkling brightly. Number 47, Mandalay Road, was identical in design to all the others in the terrace, an early Edwardian 2-up, 2-down with a small front garden. Its front door and window frames were painted in a delicate lilac, complementing the pale blues, pinks and yellows of its neighbours. Inside, Ella was lolling on a sofa that was strewn with shawls to hide the decades of wear and tear. There was little spring left in its base, but it had been Ella's grandmother's and was therefore treasured. She looked contentedly at the Christmas tree she'd put up that afternoon. A pot of tea, now stewed, and a half-empty mug sat on a tray by her side. On the television, Julie Andrews was yodeling. All was well with the world. She heard the creak of the floorboards above and the tread on the stairs before the door to the sitting room opened. Her brother came in, rubbing his stubbly chin and yawning. "What are you watching?" he said. "Shift yourself." She moved her legs and he sat in the space she'd created. She said, "What do you think of the tree?" He looked at it. Oh, yeah, nice. One of Granny's baubles has broken. Inevitable after all these years. I know, but it upsets me. Each year, a little more of our history gone. What makes you so cheerful? He asked, prodding her with his elbow. Christmas is a time for reflection, she said primly. He grunted and watched as Julie Andrews and the Von Trapp children worked the little puppets. So, you hungry? He asked. She nodded. I've got fish fingers and waffles in the freezer. Oh, I fancied Indian. Have we got enough money? Oh, bollocks to that. I'll put it on my credit card. Are you going to eat that, Bargy? Henry reached with his fork to spear it, but Ella got there first. Mine. I'm starving. Henry mopped up the last of his tarka dal with his Peshwari naan and sat back, contentedly munching. God, that was good. Don't speak with your mouth full. You're spitting desiccated coconut on the rug. He grinned at her. Don't care. Want a beer? We've only got one can left. Share? She nodded, and he got up to get it from the fridge. They were sitting on the threadbare Aubusson rug, another of Granny's hand-me-downs, backs against the sofa, watching a rerun of the Mr. Tibbs mysteries on a satellite channel. Henry reappeared with the last tin of beer and settled himself back down. I rather fancy old Nancy, he said. Yeah, she's very glam, agreed Ella, but then Mr. Tibbs is very handsome too. Yeah, I read somewhere that in real life that actor's a bit of a goer, Henry said. Really? He looks like the perfect gentleman. They watched as Mr. Tibbs climbed in through an open window at the suspect's house. He was closely followed by his secretary and sleuthing sidekick, Nancy Trumpet, who revealed a lacy stocking top as she slid over the casement. Phew, murmured Henry. Ella tutted. What? Her brother said. You know what. What do you expect me to do when I see a lacy stocking top and a glimpse of suspender? My generation has sold short on all that stuff. You girls and your tights and big pants and boring bras. I was born too late. Ella laughed. Ah, so Jules has blown you out, has she? No. When did you last see her then? The other day. Where? Can't remember. So what happened? She blew me out. Ha! Why? Oh, she said she liked me and all that, but... Henry pitched his voice higher and posher. She couldn't see the future for us, and anyway she wanted to be free to see other people. Like who? Justin. Justin No Socks and Loafers? Yeah. Oh, Ella was offended on her brother's behalf. Well, she's welcome to that total twit. He is a twit, isn't he? Total. They sat quietly thinking about Justin and Jules and watching the television screen as Mr. Tibbs slipped his penknife into the lock of the desk drawer and revealed the stolen diary they'd been searching for. The camera cut to Nancy, a lock of hair falling alluringly over one eye and a button or two of her silk blouse undone more than was strictly necessary. Henry was rapt. Stop looking at her cleavage. I'm not. Yes, you are. If you must know, I was looking at the gorgeous scenery. The screen was now on a wide shot of a Cornish beach, the wind whipping white horses off the crests of the waves. Henry sighed. I miss Cornwall. Ella sighed too. Yeah. We haven't been back for a long time, have we? She poked him with her foot. If you ever get a girlfriend, you can take her down. Give her the romantic tour of Trevay, Granny's old house, our old school, and she'd be putty in your hands. That night, lying in her bed and listening to the rain still hurling itself at number 47, Ella thought about what her brother had said after they'd finished watching TV. She did need a job. She'd had plenty of them since getting her art degree from Swindon, where she trained to be an illustrator specialising in children's books, but none of them had been an illustrator. She'd been a chalet maid in Val d'Isere, a nanny in Ibiza, Holland and Scotland, and a barmaid in countless pubs and bars in South London. Henry had taken pity on her and offered her a room in number 47, a house he'd bought from his best friend when he'd left to get married. Henry was working his way up in a firm of commercial surveyors, but he was making it very clear that he couldn't afford to have his sister as a non-rent guest forever, even if she had bought her share of Granny's furniture with her. She thumped her pillows into a more comfortable shape and sent a little prayer to her grandmother. Granny, would you find me a nice job? Either someone who'd like me to illustrate a book or a publisher who wants to print Hedgerow Adventures, little children's book she's written. Please, Granny. Night-night. In the morning, how are we doing? Another little bit here. In the morning, Ella felt refreshed and hopeful. The sun was shining and every rain cloud had vanished, leaving the sky periwinkle blue. She sang along to the radio as she washed up last night's curry plates and put some bacon under the grill. Henry appeared. Bacon? Ella, you're a darling. It's the last few rashers, but enough for sandwiches. What sort of day have you got planned? He asked as she plonked a bottle of ketchup in front of him. She had good news. Well, I'm going to look for a job. He raised his eyebrows at her as he bit into his sandwich. She raised hers back. Yeah, a proper job, and I'm going to send out Hedgerow Adventures to another literary agent. He couldn't hide his frustration. Not another one. Yes, she said defiantly. It was lunchtime and her feet were tired. Not having enough money to top up her Oyster card, she'd walked for miles, checking every job agency before setting off on the long hike up to Bedford Square and the offices of the latest hotshot literary agent she'd read about in the bookseller. The brass plaque outside was freshly polished. She walked up the short flight of steps and pushed the doorbell on the intercom. A buzzer sounded and the blackly glossy front door opened to reveal a silent marble hall with a grand staircase curling up to the right. On her left was an open doorway, and a smart young man behind the desk spoke without looking up. Can I help you? Thank you, yes. I was wondering if I could have a meeting with someone about my book. His eyes scanned her from head to toe. And back again. Expressionless, he asked, do you have an appointment? No, but perhaps I could... I'm sorry, we don't accept unsolicited manuscripts. I see. It's a very short story. It would only take a few minutes. You must have an appointment first. Well, may I make one? Has anyone asked to see your manuscript? Well, no, but... Well, then I can't make an appointment. But how do I make an appointment if no one's read my book? And how do I get someone to read my book if I can't get an appointment? He smiled wanly. It's a very difficult business. The phone on his desk rang and he took the call, making it clear that he'd terminated his dealings with Ella. Ella was angry and felt humiliated to boot. She pulled herself up tall and walked back into the hall to let herself out. Running down the staircase was a young woman with her hair scraped messily back from her face and a smudge of red ink on her cheek. She was heading for the front door as Ella was struggling with the handle. Here, let me help you, said the woman. The door opened with ease under her practised touch. She smiled at Ella. Are you Gilda's temp? Ella wished she were. No, but the woman spotted Ella's manuscript. Oh, an author. Well, not exactly. The woman smiled knowingly. Supercilious Louis wouldn't let you hand it in. Give it to me and I'll read it. You've got your contact details on it, I assume? Yes, on the front page. Great. Sorry, I must rush. Meeting someone for a coffee. I'll be in touch. You never know. This just might be your lucky day. Bye. Ella watched as the woman walked quickly across the square. Granny, she murmured, what have you done? So you can bet your beans that they all end up in Cornwall, and there's a lot of stories to be told. Some happier than others, but there's going to be a lovely love story too. So there we are. That's the postcard of this week. Thank you very, very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. You've all been so supportive. And next week, we're going to do Coming Home, which is a kind of sequel to the postcard in terms of Ella's story. So there you are. Fingers crossed you like it and all goes well. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll be thinking of you, and don't forget the omnibus of this week's book, the postcard, will be on Facebook at 11 o'clock Sunday morning. So you can listen to the Archer's omnibus from 10 to 11 and then listen to this, and it'll be available all the time. But bless your hearts, I'm enjoying doing this, and it is, I think I've said it to you before, but this is Lent, and I do have a faith, but I am hopeless at giving things up. So my way of doing it was to give something else, and so I hope that Lent is going well for you, not too difficult. And yeah, see you Monday. God bless. Bye bye.